In the darkest corners of the galaxy, where ancient civilizations whisper warnings across the void, there exists a legend so terrifying that entire star systems have been abandoned rather than risk its fulfillment. The Oracle of Gent Prime, a being older than most suns, spoke only once of the two-legged storm, a force so destructive that it could tear through the fabric of space itself. For millennia, every spacefaring race heeded this warning, marking certain sectors as forbidden, certain worlds as cursed. But humans? Humans have never been good at following warnings. When the colony ship Determination received the distress signal from Kepler 442b, Captain Sarah Chen didn't know she was about to fulfill an ancient prophecy. She didn't know that the seemingly peaceful planet below harbored secrets that had kept the galaxy's most powerful empires at bay for 3,000 years. All she knew was that people needed help, and humans don't abandon their own. What follows is the story of how humanity earned its most feared title among the stars, not through conquest or cruelty, but through the simple, terrifying refusal to give up when any sane species would run. This is the story of why, even now, alien children are told bedtime stories about the day the Oracle's warning came true, and the two-legged storm was finally awakened. Some legends are born from fear, others are born from hope. The most dangerous legends are born from both. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, watching the blue-green marble of Kepler 442b slowly rotate beneath them. 3 months ago, this world had been home to humanity's most ambitious colony project. Now, according to their sensors, it was silent as a tomb. "Captain, we're receiving the automated distress beacon on all frequencies," Communications Officer Lopez reported, his voice tight with concern. "But no response to our hails." Sarah nodded grimly. The beacon had been broadcasting for 6 weeks, ever since the colony had gone dark. Command had debated whether to send a rescue mission at all, given how far the planet was from established shipping lanes. But Sarah had volunteered immediately. 12,000 colonists, including families, scientists, and children, didn't just disappear without a good reason. "Dr. Vasquez, what do your atmospheric readings tell us?" The mission's xenobiologist looked up from her instruments, pushing a strand of grey hair from her face. "Everything appears normal, Captain. Oxygen levels are stable, no toxic gases, no signs of atmospheric processes failing. Whatever happened down there, it wasn't environmental." "Pirates?" suggested Lieutenant Commander Park, the ship's tactical officer. "This far out?" Sarah shook her head. "There's nothing worth raiding except the colony itself, and pirates don't usually leave distress beacons running." What Sarah didn't know was that, at that very moment, her ship was being watched from a dozen different hidden observation posts scattered throughout the system. The watchers belonged to species whose names humans had never heard, whose civilizations had stood for millennia before Earth's sun had formed. They watched with a mixture of fascination and growing horror as the human ship continued its approach to the forbidden world. On the bridge of the Zephyrian monitoring station, senior analyst Kethvar's tentacles writhed with anxiety as he observed the human vessel. "They're not stopping," he whispered to his companion, his translator struggling with the emotional undertones. "By the Oracle's warning, they're actually going to land." His partner, an ancient being whose species had no name humans could pronounce, simply nodded. "Alert the Council. The prophecy stirs. After 3,000 years, someone has ignored the warning." Back aboard the Determination, Sarah was reviewing the colony's final transmissions. The last coherent message had come from Colony Administrator Williams, and it was brief. "Something's happening in Sector 7. The excavation team found something. We're investigating. We'll report back in 12 hours. That was 6 weeks ago. "Captain," Lopez called out, "I'm detecting several ships in the outer system. They're maintaining distance, but they're definitely watching us." Sarah frowned. "This system was supposed to be uninhabited except for the colony. Can you identify them?" "Negative, ma'am. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. Multiple different ship types, different tech signatures. It's like a whole fleet of different species is out there." Vasquez looked up sharply. "Captain, that's impossible. This system was thoroughly surveyed before colonization. There was no sign of sapient life." "Well, there is now." Sarah made her decision. "Maintain course for the colony. Red alert status. If someone wants to talk to us, they know where to find us." The descent to Kepler 442b's surface was eerily quiet. New Geneva, the colony's main settlement, appeared on their screens as they broke through the cloud layer. From the air, everything looked normal. The prefab buildings stood in neat rows, the agricultural domes gleamed in the afternoon sun, and the mining equipment sat exactly where it should be, that there were no people. Sarah led the first landing team personally, along with Dr. Vasquez, Lieutenant Park, and a squad of Marines. They sat down in the colony's main square, their boots crunching on the gravel paths that had been so carefully laid out by the first wave of colonists. "Biosings?" Sarah asked Sergeant Rodriguez, who was scanning with the team's most sensitive equipment. "Nothing human within a kilometer radius, Captain. But," Rodriguez paused, studying his readings, "there's something weird about these readings. It's like there's an energy signature I don't recognize." They moved through the colony systematically. Every building was intact, every door sealed properly. Personal belongings were still in place. Meals sat half-finished on tables as if everyone had simply vanished in the middle of their daily routines. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez called from the colony's research lab, "you need to see this." The lab was a mess, but not from violence. Papers were scattered everywhere, computers were still running analysis programs, and several pieces of equipment had been left running continuously for weeks. But what caught Sarah's attention were the photographs covering every available surface. They were pictures of ruins. "This is from Sector 7, Dr. Vasquez explained, holding up a high-resolution image. "The mining team found these about 2 weeks before the colony went silent. Look at this architecture, Captain. These aren't natural formations." The photograph showed massive stone structures buried deep in the planet's crust. The architecture was unlike anything in human databases, sweeping curves that seemed to defy gravity, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. But what made Sarah's breath catch were the massive statues that dominated the central chamber. They depicted beings that were unmistakably human. "That's impossible," Lieutenant Park breathed, looking over Sarah's shoulder. "Humans have never been to this system before the colony mission." Vasquez was already cross-referencing the images with her equipment. "The geological surveys suggest these ruins are at least 50,000 years old. Maybe older. But the artistic style, the proportions of these figures, they're definitely human. Maybe they're not meant to represent humans," Sarah suggested. "Maybe they just happen to look like us." "Captain," Sergeant Rodriguez interrupted from across the room, "you need to see the colony's final logs." The security recordings told a strange story. 2 weeks before the colony went silent, the mining team had indeed discovered the ruins. The initial exploration had been routine, methodical, exactly what you'd expect from trained xenoarchaeologists. But then something had changed. The colonists had become obsessed with the site. Work crews had abandoned their regular duties to help with the excavation. Scientists had worked around the clock without sleep, and in the final days nearly the entire colony population had been making daily pilgrimages to Sector 7. "Look at their faces," Dr. Vasquez whispered, pointing to the screen showing dozens of colonists walking toward the excavation site. "They look happy, peaceful, like they're going home." The final recording was from the mining site itself. It showed Colony Administrator Williams standing before the largest human statue, a massive figure carved from some kind of dark stone that seemed to absorb light. Williams was speaking, but not to his camera operator. He was speaking to the statue. "We understand now," Williams was saying, his voice filled with strange reverence. "We understand why we were drawn here, why humanity was meant to find this place. The Oracle was wrong, wasn't it? You're not a storm to be feared. You're a power to be awakened." The recording cut off abruptly. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What Oracle? What was he talking about?" "I don't know," Dr. Vasquez replied. "But we need to get to Sector 7. If the colonists are there, if they're alive, agreed. But we're not going unprepared." Sarah activated her comm unit. "Commander Torres, prepare a second landing team with full archaeological and medical support. And get me a direct line to those ships in the outer system. I want to know who they are and what they know about this planet." The response from the mysterious fleet came within minutes, but it wasn't what Sarah had expected. Instead of a transmission, a single small craft approached the colony, broadcasting on an ancient frequency that their computers barely recognized. The being that emerged from the craft was tall, ethereal, with features that seemed to shift in the light. When it spoke, the words bypassed their translation software entirely, appearing directly in their minds. "I am Advisor Linthara of the Galactic Preservation Council," the being communicated. "You must leave this world immediately. You do not understand what you have found." Sarah stepped forward, her hand instinctively resting on her sidearm. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Determination. We're here to rescue our people. If you have information about their whereabouts, I'd appreciate your cooperation." "Your people are beyond rescue," Linthara replied. its mental voice heavy with something that might have been sadness. They have awakened something that has slept for millennia. The oracle warned of this day. Never wake the two-legged storm, it said. But your species does not listen to warnings. What are you talking about? What oracle? What's down in those ruins? Linthara's form seemed to shimmer with emotion. 50,000 years ago, your species ruled a third of this galaxy. Not humans as you know yourselves now, but your predecessors. They were called the Architects, and they were magnificent. And terrible. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. That's impossible. Human civilization is barely 10,000 years old. Human civilization, yes. But humanity itself is far older than your records suggest. The Architects were masters of genetics, of consciousness itself. They could reshape matter with their will, cross the galaxy in the span of a thought, but they were also curious, always pushing boundaries, always asking, what if, when wiser species knew to ask, should we? What happened to them? Astra asked. They transcended physical existence, Linthara explained. But before they did, they left guardians, instructions, and warnings. The ruins you have found are not just archaeological sites, Captain Chen. They are recruitment centers. Recruitment centers? The Architects knew that one day humanity would spread to the stars again. They left these sites to find those who carried the genetic markers, the mental patterns, the spark of what they once were. Your colonists didn't disappear, Captain. They evolved. Lieutenant Park raised his weapon. Where are they? Linthara turned its attention to the young officer, and Park suddenly staggered, his eyes wide with shock. Stand down, Lieutenant, Sarah ordered. What did you do to him? I showed him a glimpse of what his people have become. Linthara replied. Look around you, Captain. Your senses detect no human life because your people are no longer strictly human. They exist on a different level of reality now, one that your instruments cannot measure. You're saying they're dead? I am saying they have become something far more dangerous than dead. The Oracle foresaw this day when humanity would reclaim its ancient power. It called your species the two-legged storm because of what you become when you remember what you once were. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. I don't care about ancient prophecies or galactic councils. I came here to rescue 12,000 people, and I'm not leaving without them. Captain, Dr. Vasquez interrupted, holding up her scanner. I'm getting some unusual readings from the direction of Sector 7. Energy patterns unlike anything I've seen before. In the distance toward the mining site, the air itself seemed to be shimmering, and, for just a moment, Sarah could swear she saw figures moving in that shimmer. Human figures, but somehow more than human. They're calling to you, Linthara observed. Even now, you feel it, don't you? The pull toward the ruins, the sense that you're finally coming home. Sarah did feel it, a strange tugging sensation, as if something deep in her genetic memory was stirring. But she forced herself to focus on her duty. If our people are alive in any form, then we're going to help them, whether you approve or not. Captain, Lieutenant Park said suddenly, his voice strange and distant. I can hear them. They're happy. They want us to join them. Sarah spun around to see her tactical officer staring towards Sector 7 with an expression she'd seen before in the colony's final recordings. The same peaceful, reverent look that Williams had worn. Lieutenant, report to the medical bay immediately. Dr. Vasquez, run a full neural scan on him. But even as she gave the orders, Sarah could feel something changing in the air around them. The very atmosphere seemed to be alive, whispering in languages that predated human speech. And in the distance, the shimmering grew stronger. Linthara stepped backward toward its craft. You have perhaps 6 hours before the transformation becomes irreversible for anyone who remains on this world. I have warned you, as my duty requires. What you do with that warning is your choice. Wait, Sarah called out. If you know so much about this, help us. Help us understand what's happening. Understanding is what your people do best, Captain Chen, Linthara replied, as its ship's engines began to hum. And it is also what makes you so terrifying. You will understand, and when you do, the galaxy will tremble. The alien craft lifted off, leaving the human landing team alone in the increasingly strange atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Sarah looked at her people, Rodriguez looking confused but alert, Dr. Vasquez frantically taking readings. Lieutenant Park still staring toward the ruins with that distant expression. All right, people, Sarah decided. We're going to Sector 7, but we go prepared. We go together, and we come back with our people. Whatever they've become, they're still human. And humans don't abandon each other. As they began the trek toward the excavation site, none of them noticed the way the very ground seemed to pulse with energy beneath their feet, or how the symbols carved into distant stones had begun to glow with a soft, welcoming light, or how, with each step they took toward the ruins, the strange peace that had claimed the colonists began to settle over them as well. Behind them, in the main square of New Geneva, their shuttle's instruments recorded the moment when human life signs on Kepler 442b suddenly doubled, then tripled, then became too numerous to count. The two-legged storm was awakening, and Sarah Chen was about to learn why the galaxy had spent 50,000 years trying to forget the name of humanity's true ancestors. The journey to Sector 7 took 3 hours across rough terrain, and with each passing kilometer, the world around them became increasingly strange. Dr. Vasquez's instruments detected energy readings that shouldn't exist according to known physics. The air itself seemed to thrum with power, and more than once, Sergeant Rodriguez reported seeing movement in his peripheral vision that vanished when he turned to look directly at it. Lieutenant Park had grown progressively quieter, walking with the same purposeful stride that the colonists had displayed in their final recordings. When Sarah tried to engage him in conversation, his responses were distant, almost dreamy. "Lieutenant, I need you to stay focused," Sarah ordered as they crested a ridge overlooking the excavation site. "I am focused, Captain," Park replied, but his voice carried a strange resonance. "More focused than I've ever been in my life. Can't you feel it, the clarity? Everything makes sense now." Below them, the mining operation spread across several acres of scarred earth. Massive excavation equipment sat abandoned, but the site itself was far from empty. The ruins that the colonists had uncovered were vast beyond anything the photographs had suggested. Towering spires of dark stone emerged from the earth like the ribs of some buried titan, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when observed directly. And throughout the ruins, hundreds of figures moved with fluid, purposeful grace. They had been the colonists once, but now they were something more. Their movements were too smooth, too coordinated, as if they were all part of a single organism. They looked human still, but there was a quality of light about them, as if they were illuminated from within by some inner fire. "My God," Dr. Vasquez whispered, raising her binoculars. "Look at them. They're working together with perfect coordination. No communication, no hesitation. It's like they share a collective mind." Sarah watched as a group of transformed colonists lifted a massive stone block without any apparent effort. The block floated through the air, guided by their combined will, settling into place with mathematical precision. Other groups were carving new symbols into the stone walls, their hands moving in perfect synchronization, despite working on different sections. "Captain," Rodriguez said urgently, "we've got movement behind us." Sarah turned to see more transformed colonists emerging from hidden passages in the earth. They didn't appear threatening. In fact, they were smiling, their faces radiant with joy. Leading them was a figure Sarah recognized from the colony records. "Administrator Williams?" Sarah called out. The man who had once been Colony Administrator Williams approached with arms spread wide in welcome. He looked younger somehow, as if the transformation had reversed years of aging. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain starlight. "Captain Chen," Williams said, and his voice carried harmonics that made the air around them vibrate. "Welcome home. We've been waiting for you." "Williams, what happened here? What happened to the colonists?" "We remembered," Williams replied simply. "The architects left triggers in our genetic code, dormant instructions waiting for the right conditions. When we found the ruins, when we touched the awakening stones, we remembered what humanity was meant to be."
"Doctor!"
Vasquez stepped forward, her scanner in hand. "My readings are off the charts. You're generating energy patterns that should be impossible for biological organisms." Quote, Williams smiled. "Biology is just the first step, Dr. Moon." Vasquez. "The architects learned to transcend physical limitations. They became living expressions of will itself. And now, so can we." "The alien Linthara, it said you were dangerous," Sarah said, keeping her hand near her sidearm. "It said the galaxy fears what humans become." "Fear and respect often look the same from a distance," Williams replied. "The architects weren't conquerors, Captain. They were gardeners. They helped lesser species evolve, guided civilizations toward enlightenment. But some beings prefer the comfort of limitations." Lieutenant Park suddenly stepped forward, his eyes reflecting the same inner light that Williams displayed. Captain, he's right. I can feel the connection now, the knowledge, the purpose. This is what we were always meant to find. Sarah felt the pull again, stronger now. It wasn't just mental. Her very cells seemed to be resonating with the energy emanating from the ruins. She could sense the thoughts of her team, could feel the vast network of consciousness that connected all the transformed colonists. Captain, Doctor, Vasquez said urgently, my readings show massive energy buildups throughout the ruins. Whatever process transformed the colonists, it's accelerating. Because the awakening is nearly complete, Williams explained. For 50,000 years, the architect sites have remained dormant. But when enough humans gather, when the genetic triggers reach critical mass, the full protocol activates. What protocol? Sarah demanded. Instead of answering, Williams gestured toward the central spire of the ruins. The massive structure was beginning to glow, casting beams of light toward the sky. As Sarah watched, the light seemed to reach beyond the atmosphere, creating a beacon visible even in the afternoon sun. Communication, Williams said, a signal to every architect site on every world where humanity has spread. The awakening begins on one world, but it doesn't end there. Sarah's blood ran cold. How many sites are there? 17 confirmed worlds with significant human populations. Dr. Vasquez read from her scanner, which was somehow accessing data that shouldn't exist, including Earth. The Galactic Preservation Council has spent 50,000 years making sure this day wouldn't come, Williams continued. They've manipulated human development, suppressed our expansion, even arranged for the occasional war to keep our numbers manageable. But humanity has a way of exceeding expectations. Sergeant Rodriguez raised his weapon. Captain, we need to leave, now. But Lieutenant Park moved with inhuman speed, gently but firmly, taking Rodriguez's weapon before the sergeant could react. There's no need for violence, Sergeant. We're all on the same side. We always were. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as the symbols on the ruins began to pulse in rhythm with Park's heartbeat. How long do we have before the transformation becomes permanent? Time is a subjective concept, Williams replied. But your bodies will complete the initial transition within the next hour. Your minds may take longer to accept what you're becoming, and if we choose not to accept it? Williams's expression grew sad. Choice is an illusion born of limited perspective, Captain. Once you see the full scope of what's possible, of what humanity is meant to achieve, you'll understand that there was never really a choice at all. Doctor, Vasquez was studying her readings with growing alarm. Captain, the energy patterns are spreading beyond the ruins. I'm detecting similar signatures from the shuttle, from orbit, even from the alien ships in the outer system. The awakening calls to all consciousness, Williams explained. Human and non-human alike. The architects never intended for humanity to evolve alone. We're meant to guide others to share the gift of transcendence. In the distance, Sarah could see plumes of light rising from other locations across the planet's surface. The transformation was spreading, awakening other dormant sites, calling to any human consciousness within range. Captain, Rodriguez said, his voice strained. I can feel something changing. It's like someone's rewriting my thoughts from the inside. Shh. Sarah looked at her team. Rodriguez was fighting the influence, but his resistance was weakening. Doctor, Vasquez seemed torn between scientific fascination and terror. Lieutenant Park had already crossed over, his transformation nearly complete. Williams, if this process is so wonderful, why didn't the architects share it freely? Why hide it in dormant sites? Because consciousness must evolve naturally, Williams replied. Forced transcendence creates gods without wisdom, power without purpose. The architects seeded the ruins as tests, waiting for humanity to develop the moral framework necessary to handle infinite possibility. And you think we're ready now? Williams gestured to the transformed colonists working throughout the ruins. Look around you, Captain. No conflict, no competition, no suffering. We work in perfect harmony toward a common goal. Every need is fulfilled, every question answered. This is what peace looks like when scarcity becomes impossible. Sarah had to admit that the transformed colonists did appear content. More than content, they radiated a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she'd rarely seen in normal human beings. But something about their perfect coordination troubled her. What about individuality? What about free will? Enhanced, not eliminated, Williams assured her. I am still myself, but I'm also more than myself. I carry the accumulated wisdom of every consciousness that has ever joined the network. I am one voice in a choir of billions, but my voice remains distinct. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments. Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies. The ruins aren't just communicating with other sites, they're actually bending space-time. The architects were masters of dimensional engineering, Williams confirmed. They built networks that transcend the normal limitations of distance and time. When the awakening is complete, humanity will be able to reach every corner of the galaxy instantly. And the other species? The ones who've been watching us? What happens to them? They'll have the same choice we did. Join the network and transcend their limitations, or remain as they are and accept guidance from those who have evolved beyond the need for conflict. Sarah thought of Linthara's warning, of the fear she'd seen in the alien's mental voice. You're talking about conquest. I'm talking about evolution, Williams corrected. When a parent guides a child, is that conquest? When a teacher instructs a student, is that domination? The architects see all sentient species as their children, struggling toward a perfection that seems impossible but is actually inevitable. The light from the central spire was growing brighter, and Sarah could see similar beacons rising from the horizon. Her team's transformation was accelerating. Even Rodriguez had stopped fighting the process, his expression growing calm and distant. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said, her voice taking on the same harmonic resonance that marked the transformed. I can see the mathematical beauty of it now. The quantum equations that govern consciousness, the elegant simplicity of transcendence. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever encountered. Sarah felt the pull growing stronger, felt her resistance weakening. The promise of perfect knowledge, of existence without pain or uncertainty, was almost overwhelming. But something deep in her core rebelled against the idea of surrendering her imperfect, struggling, gloriously chaotic humanity. What if we say no? She asked. Williams tilted his head, studying her with eyes that reflected infinite depth. The transformation is already underway, Captain. Your neural patterns are synchronizing with the network. Your genetic code is expressing dormant sequences. In another few minutes, the question will become irrelevant. Sarah looked at her team, her friends, her responsibility. Rodriguez had already begun to glow with the same inner light as the others. Dr. Vasquez was speaking softly to herself in mathematical equations that seemed to reshape reality around her words. Only Lieutenant Park seemed fully aware of what was happening, and he was gazing at Sarah with compassion. Captain, Park said gently, I can feel your fear, but I can also feel what lies beyond it. There's nothing to be afraid of. This is coming home. The beacon of light from the central spire suddenly intensified, and Sarah felt something fundamental shift in her perception of reality. She could sense the vast network of consciousness that connected the transformed humans, could feel their collective joy and purpose. For a moment, she glimpsed the scope of what the architects had achieved. Civilizations guided to prosperity, conflicts resolved through perfect understanding, the elimination of suffering through the transcendence of scarcity. It was everything humanity had ever dreamed of achieving, and it terrified her absolutely. No, Sarah said firmly, drawing her sidearm. I refuse. Williams looked genuinely puzzled. Captain, you can see the truth now. You understand what we're offering. Why do you resist? Because choosing to evolve and being forced to evolve are two different things, Sarah replied. Because maybe the struggle is what makes us human. Because perfect harmony might be perfect, but it's not us. She activated her communicator. Torres, emergency beam out. 4 to transport. But instead of the familiar hum of the transporter, Sarah heard only static. William shook his head sadly. The transformation is too far advanced, Captain. Your ship's computers can no longer distinguish your altered quantum signature from the background energy of the planet. You're beyond their ability to retrieve. Sarah felt a moment of panic. But then something else kicked in. The stubborn, irrational human refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was certain. It was, she realized, exactly the quality that had driven humanity to the stars despite every obstacle the universe could throw at them. Then we walk out, she announced. Williams laughed, but not unkindly. Captain, you're surrounded by beings who can reshape matter with their will. The distance to your ship might as well be measured in light years. Sarah smiled grimly. Williams, in all your perfect wisdom, you've forgotten something important about humans.
What's that?
We're really, really bad at knowing when we're beaten.
The light from the ruins suddenly flickered, and for just a moment, Sarah saw uncertainty in Williams's transcendent eyes.
It was the first crack she'd seen in the perfect facade of the transformed colonists. And where there was one crack, she thought there might be others. The uncertainty in William's expression lasted only a moment, but it was enough to give Sarah hope. She'd spent years commanding human beings, and she knew that look. It was the expression of someone who had just encountered something outside their calculations. You felt it too, didn't you, Sarah said, studying Williams's face.
That moment when the network couldn't predict what I would do. Temporary static, Williams replied, but his voice lacked its previous certainty. Individual consciousness creates noise in the system until it fully integrates.
Or maybe, Sarah suggested, perfect harmony isn't as stable as you think. She turned to address the transformed colonists who had gathered around them.
Hundreds of them now, all watching with the same serene, enlightened expressions. But Sarah was beginning to notice small variations, micro-expressions, subtle differences in posture, tiny indicators that individuality hadn't been completely erased. I know you can all hear me, Sarah announced, not just with your ears, but through whatever network connects you. And I want you to remember something. Every one of you chose to come to Kepler. 442b. You left comfortable lives on Earth to risk everything on an unknown world. You did that because you believed in something that didn't exist yet, the possibility of making something better. We found something better, Williams interrupted. We found perfection. Did you? Sarah challenged. Because from where I stand, it looks like you found a very comfortable cage. Dr. Vasquez, her transformation now nearly complete, looked troubled. Captain, the mathematics are elegant. The system is optimized for maximum happiness and productivity. Optimized by whom? For whose definition of happiness? Sarah gestured to the ruins around them. You're all following a program written by beings who disappeared 50,000 years ago. Maybe they were wise. Maybe they were benevolent. But they weren't you. The light from the central spire flickered again, more noticeably this time. Sarah pressed her advantage. Rodriguez, I know you can hear me. You remember what you told me when you signed up for this mission? You said you wanted to see something new, something that no human had ever seen before. Is this what you had in mind? Following instructions left by dead aliens? Sergeant Rodriguez, whose transformation was less advanced than the others, blinked slowly. For a moment, confusion crossed his features. Captain, the network shows me things, beautiful things, but they all feel familiar. Because they're borrowed experiences, Sarah realized. Hand-me-down wisdom from a species that might have been completely different from us. They're trying to make you into something you were never meant to be. William stepped forward, his expression hardening. Captain, you don't understand the scope of what you're rejecting. The Architect network spans dimensions. We could eliminate suffering across the entire galaxy. Who's suffering? Sarah shot back. And who gave you the right to make that choice for everyone else? Evolution gave us that right, Williams replied. Intelligence creates responsibility. No, intelligence creates options. Wisdom is knowing which options to choose. Sarah activated her scanner and began running a broad-spectrum analysis of the energy patterns surrounding them. What she saw confirmed her suspicions. Dr. Vasquez, look at these readings. The network isn't just connecting consciousnesses, it's homogenizing them. Individual thought patterns are being averaged out, smoothed into conformity. Dr. Vasquez studied the data, her enhanced mind processing the information instantly. The optimization algorithms are designed to eliminate cognitive dissonance by merging conflicting perspectives into synthesis positions, she said, then paused. That's not evolution. That's standardization. Like averaging all music into a single perfect note, Sarah pressed. Beautiful, maybe, but it's not music anymore. The transformation had been fighting against Sarah's resistance. But now she felt something different. The network was trying to show her visions of galactic peace, of civilizations working in perfect harmony.
But beneath the surface beauty, she could sense something else. A vast emptiness where creativity and chaos and the magnificent unpredictability of life used to be.
Williams, Sarah said quietly, what's the last truly new thing any of you have thought since joining the network?
His expression grew distant as he consulted the collective memory of the transformed colonists. The silence stretched uncomfortably. We think collectively now, he finally said. Individual novelty is inefficient. Inefficient, Sarah repeated. Listen to yourself. You sound like a corporate manual. Lieutenant Park, who had been standing silently beside Williams, suddenly looked up. Captain, I can see the network's decision trees. Every choice, every thought, it's all been predetermined by the architect algorithms. We're not transcending anything. We're just really sophisticated software following really old programming. Williams turned sharply toward Park. Lieutenant, you're experiencing integration anxiety. It will pass as you accept your new perspective. What if I don't want to accept it? Park asked, and Sarah heard something in his voice that made her heart leap. Doubt. The doubt spread like ripples in a pond. Throughout the gathered colonists, Sarah could see tiny changes in expression, small shifts in posture. The perfect synchronization was developing flaws. You're disrupting the network, Williams accused, and for the first time, his voice carried an edge of something that might have been fear. Good, Sarah replied. Humans are supposed to be disruptive. It's what we do best. The central spire's light began to pulse erratically, and Sarah could feel the network's attempts to regain control intensifying. But the doubt had taken root, and doubt was perhaps humanity's greatest talent. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said urgently, the quantum matrices are destabilizing. The network is trying to compensate for increasing cognitive variance among the connected nodes. The connected nodes? Sarah laughed. Listen to yourself, Doctor. These are people, not computer terminals. I know that, Dr. Vasquez snapped, then looked surprised at her own emotional response. Why did I say nodes? They're not nodes. They're my friends, my colleagues.
Because the network is teaching you to think of people as resources to be managed, Sarah explained. Just like the architects did.
Williams raised his hand, and Sarah felt a tremendous pressure against her mind.
The network was focusing its full attention on her, trying to force her transformation to completion. But Sarah had spent her career making decisions under pressure, and she'd learned that the best response to overwhelming force was often to do the unexpected. She began to sing. It was an old song, something her grandmother had taught her. A simple melody about coming home from the sea. She sang it badly, off-key, with all the imperfect emotion of someone who couldn't carry a tune to save her life. The effect on the network was immediate. The perfect harmonies of the transformed colonists' voices faltered as they tried to process Sarah's chaotic musical offering. The central spire's light stuttered, and several of the smaller structures went dark entirely. What are you doing? Williams demanded. Being human, Sarah replied, and kept singing. Rodriguez joined in, his voice even worse than Sarah's. Then Park, who actually could sing but chose to deliberately hit wrong notes. The network, optimized for efficiency and harmony, couldn't integrate the deliberately imperfect performance. You're causing cascade failures throughout the system, Dr. Vasquez warned, but she was smiling as she said it. Then maybe the system needs to fail, Sarah suggested. The effect spread beyond her immediate team. Other colonists began to remember their own imperfections, their own quirks and flaws and wonderfully human contradictions. Some began to sing along with Sarah's terrible song. Others started to laugh or cry or argue with each other for no reason other than the joy of disagreement. William staggered as the network's unity fractured around him. You don't understand what you're destroying, he pleaded. We could have been gods. We were already something better than gods. Sarah replied. We were human. The central spire's light flickered one final time and went out. Throughout the ruins, the architect technology began to shut down as the transformation reversed itself. The colonists remained changed. They would always carry some enhancement from their experience, but they were individuals again, gloriously flawed and unpredictably human. Captain, Dr. Vasquez called out, her voice weak but recognizably her own. I'm getting communication from the fleet in orbit. The alien ships, they're asking for permission to approach. Linthara's ship landed in the same square where it had before, but this time the alien ambassador emerged with what might have been wonder in its bearing. Impossible, Linthara communicated. The architect protocols have never been successfully resisted once activated. Then maybe you didn't understand the protocols as well as you thought, Sarah suggested. How did you do it? Sarah looked around at her people. Tired, confused, but undeniably themselves again. Williams was sitting on a piece of fallen stone, his head in his hands, while other colonists were slowly making their way back toward the main settlement. We did what humans do best, Sarah explained. We got stubborn, made bad decisions, and refused to accept that someone else knew better than we did about who we should be. The Oracle warned that awakening the two-legged storm would doom the galaxy to chaos, Linthara said. Maybe, Sarah admitted. But it'll be our chaos, made by our choices for our reasons. And if we make mistakes, they'll be all mistakes to learn from. The other species will fear you now. They've seen what humans can become. Sarah thought about the network, the perfect harmony that had promised to solve every problem by eliminating the messy complexity of individual choice. Good, she decided. Let them fear us, but not because we might become something else. Let them fear us because we insist on staying exactly what we are. And what is that? Sarah smiled, watching her people help each other through the aftermath of their transformation. Some were arguing about what had happened. Others were already making plans to study the ruins properly. A few were composing terrible poetry about their experience. Unpredictable, she said. Chaotic, impossible to calculate or control or improve upon. We're the species that looks at perfection and asks, yeah, but what if we tried something different instead? The Galactic Preservation Council will want to know if humanity poses a threat to established order. Absolutely we do, Sarah confirmed cheerfully. We'll keep expanding, keep exploring, keep asking annoying questions and trying things that shouldn't work. We'll probably mess up your carefully balanced galactic politics, make friends with species you've been avoiding for millennia, and generally cause trouble wherever we go. That's what the Oracle predicted. Then your Oracle was smarter than the architects, Sarah said. It understood that humanity's real power isn't that we can become something perfect. It's that we'll always choose to remain something beautifully, chaotically, impossibly imperfect. As Linthara's ship departed to carry word back to the Galactic Preservation Council, Sarah stood with her crew watching the sunset over the ruins of humanity's ancient past. The architect technology lay silent, waiting for someone else to activate it. Someone who might make different choices.
Captain, Rodriguez asked, what do we tell Command about all this? Sarah thought about the report she'd have to write, trying to explain how humanity had turned down the offer to become gods in favor of remaining human.
We tell them the truth, she decided.
That we found something incredible, something that could have changed everything, and we chose to walk away from it. Think they'll understand. Sarah looked at her people, battered, confused, but grinning with the satisfaction of those who had faced the ultimate temptation and chosen to remain themselves.
They're human, she said. Of course they won't understand. They'll probably send another expedition to figure out what we did wrong. And when that expedition gets the same offer? Sarah smiled. They'll probably make the same choice we did. Humans are consistent that way. We consistently make the most unreasonable possible decision. As the determination lifted off from Kepler, 442b. 3 days later, carrying 12,000 colonists who had chosen messy humanity over perfect transcendence, Sarah filed her final report. It was full of contradictions, impossible explanations, and recommendations that made no logical sense. It was, in other words, a perfectly human document. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient computers recorded that the two-legged storm had indeed awakened, exactly as the Oracle had predicted. But instead of reshaping the galaxy through power, humanity had chosen to reshape it through the simple, radical act of insisting that some things were more important than improvement. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Sarah thought, was exactly as it should be. The Oracle had been right about one thing: never wake the two-legged storm. But not because humans were dangerous when they remembered what they could become. They were dangerous because they insisted on remembering what they chose to remain. And choice, as any architect could have told you, was the one force in the universe that no amount of perfect planning could ever fully control.